I had the coolest job that any electrical engineer could ever have on the ground crew for Solar Impulse 2, the first solar-powered airplane to fly around the world only using the power of the sun. IEEE-USA has given me a competitive edge because of their support system. It is so much easier doing something and being out of your comfort zone when you have someone there saying, "You got this." IEEE-USA is more than just a network. It's a family.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's IEEE-USA webinar, Job Search Trends for 2025, What You Need to Know to Stay Ahead. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. Our presenter for today is career coach and best-selling author, Elizabeth Lyons, who returns to us to discuss another exciting topic. Elizabeth stands apart in the coaching realm. As a three-time best-selling author of transformative books like I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me, and Hear Us Roar, her focus isn't just on coaching, it's on revolutionizing career trajectories. With over 2 decades immersed in talent acquisition, she possesses an unparalleled understanding of the corporate landscape. This unique perspective allows her to predict hiring, firing, and promotion patterns, giving clients an insider's advantage. Her clients span the elite echelons of major corporations like FIS, Microsoft, and Amazon, attributing their successes to her coaching. Whether it's decoding the intricacies of career advancement, skillfully managing career crises, or nurturing leaders to ascend to their next level, Elizabeth's coaching delivers transformative career-defining results. Without further ado, I'll now pass it off to our presenter. Welcome back, Elizabeth. We're very excited to see you hear what you have in store for our audience today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It'll be a good one. Interestingly enough, I pulled this data back in like January, and we're in April already. If we can believe that, we're in second quarter, and it's changed slightly. So, the slides haven't. So I could just add some interesting data to this since things have changed a little bit. Next slide, please. So what we're going to talk about today is the 3 key employment trends in 2025 that you're going to want to look at and really consider if you're in any kind of a job search or a confidential job search, or you're just even considering looking around. Maybe you haven't even dusted off your resume or what have you. These are things that you really want to know and understand before you go out into the job market. We will touch on AI and its impact in recruiting and what's going on there, what's new, and what you'll see as the job seeker. We'll talk about how to talk about AI in interviews and why that's important and how you can separate yourself from other candidates. We'll also talk about networking and the power of that and how to get out of the ATS and actually get visibility on a resume, get some feedback, and ultimately get hired. And then I've got some final tips, some links, and some takeaways for everybody around this topic. Next slide. So my name is Elizabeth Lyons. I am the author of 3 books. The first one is called Recession Proof Yourself, which I wrote back in the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. The second one is called I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me. And then the third book is called Hear Us Roar, Unapologetic Women Leading in Corporate America. I've been in career coaching and in this space in engineering, IT, cybersecurity, and tech for well over 20 years. And there's lots of coaches out there. When I started, there wasn't even that title, believe it or not. There wasn't even that name. People didn't write books back then. So I've been doing it a long time. But what makes me a little unique and a little different is that I still hire people. I'm still very much in the game. I still see and review thousands of resumes in any given year. I still make hiring decisions in terms of candidate slates, and I definitely have my ear to the ground in terms of what's happening in hiring trends and what's typically happening in corporate America. Next slide. So we're going to jump right into it. This is the most important thing that you want to take away from this webinar today. We are moving to skills-based hiring. When I first talked about this early in January, nobody had heard of it. Now, very slowly, you're seeing a couple of headlines with companies moving this direction. And there's lots of reasons why, and I'll cover that as well. Skills-based hiring is very different than the traditional hiring we've done for probably 20 or 30 years. What employers are looking for now is skills. So if you're talking about, I've done this job for 20 years, that is not factored in, and that's actually not what they want to hear at all. That's not what's looked upon. What's looked upon is what have you done now or recently for them in terms of certification, upskilling, making yourself current, making yourself unique, and have you used that skill or that certification in a job prior, in maybe your current job? Do you have some hands-on experience with that? That is absolutely what they're looking for. What you're going to find between now and probably the next 12 to 18 months is the interviews are going to change. It's a very subtle thing, but as a job seeker, you'll start to notice in interviews, they're not asking questions like, tell me about a time when. They're going to ask lots of different questions based on the skills outlined in your resume. A couple important things to note there. Your skills section in your resume really needs to be current and beefed up in terms of platforms you've used, skills you've had. And I mean skills, I'm not talking soft skills. I'm talking Jira, Confluence, think platforms, think the tools that you use day in and day out, the different ones. Think about certifications that you have. Think about even certifications that you're studying for, but you haven't passed the certification yet. Maybe you haven't sat for the exam. All that you want on the actual resume. And you want to just make sure in the interviews, you're talking about that. So that's going to be the big difference. I had a client call me the other day, and she said that she'd been passed off over multiple interviews and was very disappointed, very disillusioned. And the first thing out of the gate she said is, I've done this 25 years and I've been in this industry for 25 years and I've done this and I've done that. And they don't have any interest in that. And that's the flag. That's right. They don't have any interest in that. She has all of the skills. She has some great stuff, but she's talking about the wrong things in the interview. And that's what's actually preventing her from getting hired. She's not a bad candidate. She's a fantastic candidate. But what she's talking about to the listener is not relevant. They want to hear, what can you do for me right now? Think about AI transformations. Think about all the work we've done in the cloud the last 10 years. Think about that transformation. Think about automation. That's really where companies are at right now. So people that aren't afraid of AI, have done some automation, understand the nuts and bolts of it, talk about it in interviews, which we'll get to in a little bit. Those are the candidates that they're interested in talking to and moving forward, because that's going to be different. And that's going to be your wow factor. And that's what's going to be skills based, as opposed to, I've done this for 20 and 30 years. The beauty of it is it's an opening. It's a huge opening, considering that the executive order and what it talked about with DEI, that we're removing DEI out of advertisement. We're removing counting classes of people in boxes and spreadsheets, and then saying, here's how many, of this class, this protective class we've hired, and on and on. The executive order, which I've read, frankly, which I would encourage you to read the executive order and not listen to the news, actually read it right from the White House, and how it talks about it's an opening, and it's about everybody has a fair and equitable chance. And I'm very excited about it because it actually allows people to qualify for ads where they wouldn't have a year ago. So I'll give you a great example of that. Let's say that you've been a team lead for quite a while, but you haven't been a senior manager. And the qualifications to promote up to a senior manager says you would have had to have some sort of people leadership, meaning you would have written reviews, you would have given feedback, you would have had a budget, you would have had headcount you're responsible to. It's very difficult for a team lead to qualify into that role if it's written like that. Now what they're saying is, if you have the skills, if you've led projects, if you've mentored people, if you've led people in a smaller way, you are now qualified for a leadership position. So this broadens the talent pool for the United States. And it also allows internals that are with companies a long period of time to qualify and have a real shot at some of these larger roles, which before, the way the roles were written and the qualifications and the way that it wasn't looked at skills-based, it was looked at time in the saddle, it's now a big opening. So I'm really excited that people will have a chance to be interviewed for jobs. and actually get jobs because of certification. Maybe you guys have a home lab at home, you're in there, you're breaking things, you're seeing how things work. All that's going to count. That's a skill that you're learning that you can bring to an employer. So I think it's a great opportunity and a whole new day for job seekers. And then it'll probably continue at least a couple of years, but you're going to start hearing more about it. So be ready for that. Next slide, please. Hybrid working. So this is kind of the big topic. So less and less ads are fully remote. We're definitely finding that. We're definitely seeing more hybrid working, 3 days in the office, 2 days in the office. We're seeing a lot of that going on. What you're going to see in the war for talent is the companies like Amazon or JP Morgan that are a full solid 5 days in the office. AT&T is another one. They're a full 5 days in the office. Their talent may leave, and that's going to, again, open up the talent pool for the other companies that are maybe 3 days in the office. There are some offices that are 3 days in the office, but you have to show not just your badge swipes, but you have to physically be there 8 hours, and they're pulling reports to see that. Some companies have that, some companies don't. So it'll be interesting how this continues to evolve. And the whole point of it is that collaboration, that working together, that teamwork, and also being visible. It's really about right now, what are you doing, right? Can you write 5 bullet points about what you did yesterday or last week or the week before? What are you doing? Measuring that, looking at that. And I think for some, that kind of ambiguity, that the more that goes away, that's actually going to be welcomed as we move into this. So definitely performance driven, not as much attendance driven. Most companies across the board, every single one is very willing and open and friendly around time management. If you've got a sick kid, they'll accommodate you. If you're sick yourself, you can't get in the office 3 days a week. They don't want you spreading it around. They'll give you a hall pass on that extra week that you need to be home and work and not cough all over everybody or whatever it is. So it's an interesting time, but definitely you're going to see more on this hybrid working, and you're going to see this competitive race for talent, the offices that are 5 days in versus the offices that are only 3 days in. Next slide, please. AI and hiring. So there is this misconception that AI is built into certain tools or platforms like Workday, and that's preventing you from actually getting the interview. It's not true. What I will tell you is true machine learning is in places like LinkedIn. So it was, a couple months ago, I took a certification on LinkedIn hiring and their tool, and went all the way through the class and took the test and got the certification. And what was interesting was it is true machine learning. And so how do you know what that is and what that sounds and feels like? So I put in my search parameters, I click enter, I get this huge list of candidates. I click on one, and way down the bottom, there's a little note that pops up that says, well, if you like John, why don't you look at Jennifer's resume too? Well, that's machine learning. That's not automation. That's a whole other thing built in there. And it's kind of like Amazon. If you go to Amazon and you like the green shirt and it pops up and says, well, we have these other colors too, or this other vendor has these other shirts that are similar, but not quite like what you were looking at. Do you like these? And you're going to start to see that more and more. When it's in places like LinkedIn, it's actually very difficult for a recruiter to find you, because we've got millions and millions of profiles within LinkedIn, kind of like Amazon. We've got millions and millions of people selling stuff on Amazon. We've got millions and millions of candidates now. When I was very first on LinkedIn and it had just started, it wasn't like that. So that kind of machine learning embedded in there would have been major helpful for me or other recruiters. Now it's just pulling out and screaming above the noise. And I honestly can't tell you if it's good or bad. I personally don't like it. I would rather look at my own searches rather than have recommendations, so that I could ensure a nice diverse candidate slate and really kind of looking for what I'm looking for on paper. So personally, I don't care for it. but it is out there. Now, where it is not is, which is very important that I share with you, is right now, today, it is not in Workday. So to be very clear, it's not like anybody who is in a company that runs Workday, and that's about 98% of the companies out there now run Workday. If that recruiter comes in and sits down, it's not like you click into the rack and up pops this thing and says, hey, Elizabeth, I see you're working on this rack. Here's 10 candidates you might want to look at first. That does not happen. And the reason it doesn't is due to the laws that we have around discrimination, and being very careful and very mindful of the law. And again, it kind of goes back to this time is about an opening and fairness for everyone. You know, you can have some skill and absolutely be qualified, and we would want to screen you in, where for 30 years we screened you out. So it's all an opening. But there's a lot of misconception around, oh, the bots are preventing me from getting hired. It's this terrible thing. That's not happening, not right now. There's a lot of work that needs to be done around the legislation and how we're going to actually safely implement machine learning into some HR tools. Where you are going to see it is chatbots. Lots and lots of chatbots if you're a job seeker this year. So you'll be in an application and you'll be working away on it, and up will pop a chatbot that says, hey, I saw you're looking at this particular job. There's a couple other open here. Or it'll start to interface with, hey, I see you're filling out an application. Can I help you with anything? You'll start to see that kind of a chatbot in the hiring process. You're definitely going to see it in reporting, and onboarding was the other trend that we were seeing. And definitely in automation. So what you're really going to see in AI is automation in HR, just like in tech, right? Just like in tech or networking or security, a lot of automation of processes to kind of remove the human error and make it easier. Same thing in HR. You're going to see a lot of automation in there, slowly but surely, as opposed to true machine learning where we're screening in or screening out, or it's just going to take over our hiring process. Next slide. So this is really important, actually. If you are considering doing a job search this year, you really want to start to think about how you're going to talk about AI in your interviews. Either if you've worked on some of that, you know, you're going to want to talk about examples where you've done some automation and how much did it save and how did it impact the company and how did you go about that? Like literally step by step, how did you go about that? You might ask them in interviews, tell me about your AI transformation. Every single company is going through one. So you might ask them about that to get some sense of where you could add your skill set into that and how you can help them. That's going to make you a vastly different candidate. Right now, there's this huge fear, if you're not a technologist particularly, there's this huge fear around AI and robots and the bots and machine learning. There's this huge fear around it. And I will tell you that candidates that openly talk about it, embrace it, talk about classes they took, talk about ways that they've already been doing some automation, those candidates are going to get remembered and those candidates are going to get called back. The ones that, you know, don't have much experience or are afraid of it, eventually that's going to get seen in interviews. Right now, they're not asking a lot of questions around automation or AI unless it's a very AI specific role you're applying to. But I think to be forthcoming and just ask them, hey, what are you doing? And be excited about it and tell them what you've learned and how you can give to them. That's going to really help you in your interviews and the perception and also be so memorable in that candidate slate. When they go to do the callbacks, you're going to stand out in a good way. Next slide. So how to get hired faster. So here's the reality of what's going on. If I open up a rec, let's say I post it 2 or 3 days, I literally get about 50 candidates. And in 3 days, let's say there's 50 candidates, I would honestly say, and I did it this morning, very fresh in my mind, of the 50 candidates, 90% of them are not even qualified. Not even close. Didn't read the ad, clearly don't make the qualifications. You know, I've got a pen tester applying to a risk job. Doesn't make any sense. There's nothing here. And so all recruiters are kind of going through this because people are just throwing their resumes around hoping for a call. There's a lot of, frankly, desperation in the market. And so that's causing some of the pandemonium. And then I was told myself on one of these webinars that there are actually services and bots that will appear on applications or reach out to you or send you some sort of advertisement that says, hey, I see you're filling out your resume. I can rewrite it and send it out to more people. And then you're charged per page or per entry or what have you. I have known software developers that actually built their own tool that bragged on LinkedIn that said they applied to, 150 jobs in a weekend. So let me tell you what that causes. That causes somebody like me to get up in the morning, log in. You've got, 50 applications over a weekend, over like 2 days, and 95% of them are bad. And so it's very difficult for me to find you because I'm weeding through hundreds of applicants in just a week that are not what I want whatsoever. And so there's two things I would say. Don't apply to jobs, even though we're at skills-based hiring, don't apply to jobs where you clearly send a resume that does not articulate that you are that, right? So I shouldn't be reviewing a pen tester for an audit compliance risk person unless they rewrote the entire resume that showed me how they were very heavy-handed on risk. Please don't apply. It's a big waste of time. We're going to decline you out anyway. It's unlikely we have something on our desk we're going to move you over to. It's not worth resume blasting trying to get people's attention. It's not going to work. What we are finding is because of this happening in the market, that the only way people are getting visibility now is networking. And I'm definitely seeing at the senior manager, director, vice president level, or very specialized high level individual contributors like principal level engineers, architects, those sorts of skill sets. When they apply, they're one of many and they just don't get the visibility. So the networking comes in where, let's say, somebody at that company. Well, instead of trying to get the hiring manager's name, which has been the game for 10 or 15 years, the real game is, can you get the name of the recruiter? Well, anybody can that works at that company. They go right into Workday, they can plunk in the rec and see the name of the recruiter. And then the ask is, would you just go to that recruiter and ask them for visibility on my resume? Just ask them to just read it and decline me out or call me in. And what we found with that kind of networking, people got calls literally within 24 hours or declined out for interviews. And that stops you sitting in that applicant pool or just being really disappointed when you look on LinkedIn and you see like 600 people applied to that job. And you're like, why would I even apply to that job? So the real key in networking is people know people at companies, and you want to know that recruiter. But again, the ask is for visibility on the resume. You're not asking for the interview. You're not writing a dissertation on how you think you fit this job and all the things you can do. It's really a very soft ask. And what we find is generally people will do this request and do it pretty quickly. So the networking, if you want to get hired faster, this is the best way to go. And we found that this actually works. Next slide. So I left you with some great reads, some data, places where I pulled some data, but just some great reads that you can kind of see what's coming up in 2025. I've definitely found that all the articles and then what has played out the last 4 months was just very on par, very verbatim of what we're experiencing as job seekers and also as hiring leaders as well. If you want me to review your resume or you want me to give you some feedback on your job search and some things you can do, you're more than welcome to reach out through Lionsology and schedule an appointment. I'm happy to do that. But this will give you a good start in terms of what to do it. So just to quickly recap, if you're out there in job search or considering a job search, remember it's all about skills. Don't lead with, I did this for 20 years. It doesn't matter. I did this for 10 years. I did this for 5 years. Really think about the skills that you can give. Really think about what you can offer them. Consider their AI transformation and where they may be on the journey and how you can impact that, how you can help them with that. What can you add to that? In those interviews, you want your resume to kind of touch upon that. And you definitely want those kinds of things coming out in the interview that will make you a highly viable candidate and make them want to call you back and hopefully ultimately hire you. Next slide. I think we're at the end here. Oh yeah. Okay. We're at Q&A.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So, folks, we are at the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please send in your questions through the comments and live chat section, and we'll load them on streams for Elizabeth to answer. So, Elizabeth, before we get into audience member questions, I did have a few of my own that I wanted to ask first.
Yeah.
So, first one, any idea on what kind of job roles specifically are predicted to see the most growth or high in demand in the coming year or coming years, I guess?
Yeah. So the one thing we're seeing around that AI transformation is they definitely need leaders that can help with that transformation, help figure out the right talent to hire and retain, and really help between the business and the tech as we continue to heat up through this. Most ads and most jobs you see will really not call that out right now because everybody is very close to the vest on what their AI plan is. But trust me when I tell you, it's definitely going on. There isn't a company that isn't doing it. So it's out there, it's happening. But one of the things they're really looking for is those leaders that can take the technical people, take the business argument or whatever they're trying to solve with AI, whether it's automation or full-blown machine learning, and actually, make it happen. So the leadership positions are definitely going to be in demand. The other thing that we're seeing, interestingly enough, and I know I talked about this on my last webinar, is Boston Scientific. And they just released, and I put it on my LinkedIn, how they've now gotten like a fleet of robots that can actually go, do full-blown warehouse work. And so what you're going to see in terms of roles that are impacted, you're going to see things that where robotics can come in and cut workman's compensation claims, cut absenteeism, just take the people dynamic way out of it or remove it almost in those repetitive things, the wear and tear on the body. In large warehouses, you're going to see it, and manufacturing, you're going to see it. That's where you're going to start to see it. So that skill set is going to be impacted, and it's very, very close. The other place you'll see it where it's impacted actually is in the lower trades, where the lower skill sets like restaurants. Right now, I think Taco Bell was one of the first restaurants that came out and went 100% automation in their menu. Excuse me. So when you walk in to order, you just walk in and touch a screen and order and then go and get your food. There is no person at a counter greeting you anymore. And you're going to see a lot of restaurants go that way because the skill set shortage, people, people not wanting those jobs, again, the workman's comp claims and all that. If you can just put in that interface and it runs forever and cut your labor, now you're actually able to offer a product and be competitive because everything's gone up, right? Food prices, labor shortage, all of that. So you're really going to see those jobs get impacted quite a bit. Eventually, they may be all automated, and it will just get just like at the supermarket, we can check our own groceries. Similar, where a lot of fast food places will just do away with as much, as little human touch as possible is what you're going to see there. Any kind of automation skills. So when I get to right down into like skills like Python, Shell, Bash, scripting skills, all of those that are true automation, those skills are going to be in high demand. I'm seeing less demand in the cloud certifications. It feels like everybody's got one on some platform. I'm seeing less of that. More on, the automation skills is what I see that's more in demand.
Awesome. Great insight. Thank you. So it looks like we're getting a lot of audience member questions, so we'll just hop right into them. So first question, actually, I want to highlight. John asks, how much is a consultation?
For
you.
Go through the website. I don't take all clients. I really don't. I can't help everyone. Some people, I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. Just go through the site and we can talk about it.
This next question, Mark asks, any advice for ages 60 plus workers that's had little or no exposure to AI? Should I just go ahead and retire?
It's up to you. I've seen people at 60 that do a whole bunch of self-learning and go back and understand this and become that technical leader and be the bridge and work out another 5 to 8 years. I think it's up to you. I mean, and I've seen people, I was at a networking thing a couple weeks ago. This guy was 100% sour grapes. He was 55 years old. He's like, it's great. I don't have to learn anything anymore. I got out at the right time. So honestly, I think it depends on your attitude if you want to, what you want to do with your life. If you want to learn it, there's plenty of classes out there. What I would say is have some discernment about the classes you take. And understand what your objective is in learning it. When I took my 15 plus hours of courses, I took it at a very high level. I took it, my intention was to understand how it was going to impact cybersecurity, and period. And I couldn't find any article on what are we automating in cybersecurity? Where would a security analyst job go? How would it change? I had general questions around cyber. I could not find any information. I thought, okay, let me back up. Let me just understand, what is this, very simply, what is this thing called AI? And through the IEEE, I did a huge webinar on that. You can catch the replay where I literally explained, I can give you 15 to 20 hours of classes for 40 minutes and you could understand it. And my question was, what would a CISO want to know? Because a CISO is not a data engineer. They're not going to understand any of that. They're not going to be interested in it. Their eyes are going to glaze over, but they need to understand it. And so I went out and learned all of that. And so I'm like highly in demand and sought after because people think I'm the smartest person in the room, and I am so not. So if you want to learn it, you can. You can learn it at a high level. Then if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the algorithms and how they work and ethics, you can do that too. LinkedIn Learning is probably one of the best places that I would send anybody right now. There's some really great people out there on AI. My favorite is Doug Rose. I would highly recommend any of his classes to anybody.
Fantastic, thank you. And folks, I will be posting the link to Elizabeth's previous webinar on AI called AI Impact Unpacked in the comment section shortly. So look forward to that. Thanks, Elizabeth. This next question is the current feeling that a lot of folks are generating resumes with AI, hence flooding recruiters. Is that true?
Yeah, there's also, I mean, we can tell when you write it like that. I mean, when I went through 100 candidates this morning, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as a written, like out of ChatGPT. Nothing really jumped out like that, where it just felt weird or stiff or robotic. But what's happened is people are paying for these services, and they're concerned, right? Some are desperate. I mean, we're showing 4% unemployment. We've got some highly skilled people that can't even get a call to interview. And there's lots of reasons for that. Companies are start-stop right now. They have been that way since the inauguration. The reason they've been that way is this is the first time in 50 years, usually a Republican gets in the office, the stock market rallies, and all they talk about is job creation, new growth, and all this, that is not what's happening. First time in 50 years, it's all about waste cutting, government, what are we doing? Let's get this in order. So corporate America is like, oh, this is not what we're used to hearing. What's happening? On the flip side, it's giving corporate America like permission to clean it up. We're gonna back you for that. You overhired in the pandemic. So if you need to cut people, then you need to cut people. So it's an interesting thing what's happening in the employment market and how corporate America is responding and reacting to what's happening with the executive orders in the White House.
Hope that answers your question. Thanks for the insight, Elizabeth. This next question, John asks, how does the current tariff situation affect what you've said today? It seems like from what I've seen on various business channels, companies are already talking about pulling back on hiring, possibly layoffs because of the current uncertainty.
I mean, I can just tell you what I think, right? I can give you my 2 cents opinion. I don't know how great that is. Maybe the tariffs might impact when you're talking about manufacturing. And I know we have a lot of people on this call that's out of that industry, but overall the tariff talk is different than the employment talk. And honestly, the news just said we got 50 leaders this morning that are going to the table that want to talk about the tariffs. It's a scare tactic. We're not fooling around with this anymore. We're not playing. So we'll just tariff you and see how you like it. And all of a sudden 50 people are like, 50 leaders are like, hey, wait a minute. You know that? I just think I want to, you know what I said, it was nasty in the headlines 2 days ago. I think I want to like maybe talk about that again, and maybe we could work something out. And so I don't know how that's going to, I don't think that's what's happening with the unemployment and employment landscape. I think the tariff is like the separate thing. Like immigration, I think it's a separate thing. DEI, I think it's a separate thing. When I look at it holistically, 20 plus years, seeing bull markets, bear markets, you know, all I've done, right? I think that what you're seeing is corporate America rock back. And again, it's like, oh, this is different. This is not what we talk about when somebody like this gets in office. We always talk about job growth and job creation. And so that slow start stop is that. And the bottom line is we overhired in pandemic. We paid between 30 to 70, 80% more on a skill set. We are bloated. We have people that are not even on meets on their reviews. We need to clean it up, consolidate. Then you got AI dancing in the background. That's what you're seeing with corporate America and the layoffs and the hiring. That's what's really going on. Not, in my opinion, not the tariffs. Unless you're manufacturing, that could be a wild card.
Right. Elizabeth, I totally agree with that. I feel like there's just so many factors that come into play, especially in the job market. And this is something there's always uncertainty, and this has kind of always been a thing like throughout just time in general. I
Yeah.
feel like it's hard to pinpoint any one certain specific issue.
Yeah, it's like the layoffs and the hiring is like the disease, and there's all these symptoms, right? So it's like you can't point at it. Is it AI? Is it the bots? Is it cutting back? Is it the tariff? You can't really pinpoint it.
Right.
Yeah.
This next question, where would you recommend we meet other tech professionals for in-person networking?
It depends on your skill set. You know, I think that's where it would depend. You know, I could give you my examples. For me personally, I've been in payment, fintechs, financial services for many, many years. So I've belonged to a women's group that's very prominent, 7,000 members. So all those women are out of like Fiserv, Global Payments, FIS at the executive level. So when I network, I go there so I can get kind of my ear to the ground about what their company's doing, how it's tracking with the news, how close it is. So I think you can look at industry. I think you can look at skill set. Like if you're a project manager, go plunk into those PMP meetings. I think we're back to shaking hands and networking face-to-face is really the better way to go. People will remember you. And then if you do need a hand, they'll remember you better than if you were just on some virtual meeting and reached out to them in LinkedIn and did a call.
For sure. And one more thing I will add on to that. One probably big source of networking might be conferences.
Yeah.
IEEE, for example, has many conferences who comprise all the attendees are tech professionals. So look for, it doesn't have to be IEEE, but just want to.
Yeah, that's a great example. No, that's a great example. IEEE has some great conferences. I've spoken at many of them in person over the years. Again, you can go back to your industry and see industry related what conferences would be appropriate. Speaking with the women at oil and gas in May. So that's energy sector. So there's lots of different ones. I don't know. I think just to break it down, I would look at industry and then your skill set.
So our audience member, Dr. Ron Martin, asked, could you comment on the AI algorithmic discrimination protections? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like we don't have any yet, Dr. Ron. We're working on it. I think it's a country. I know AI was definitely part of the executive orders. Like right now we don't. And so we can't put in full-blown machine learning into like say Workday or what have you. We can automate, but when you're talking about algorithm, we're talking about machine learning. And so Amazon, and I may misquote the year here, I think it was in like 2012 or 2015, they did put the algorithm in there. And what happened was remember the algorithm is only as good as the data. You always have to remember this so you can't get angry at anybody. So the algorithm pulled all white men for positions and found that the slate was not diverse, not an accurate, depiction of what we have today. Well, honestly, for, 20 plus years, it was at least male in IT primarily, right? And so that doesn't really show the talent slate that we might have today. So Amazon was the first one to implement it and kill it immediately before they ran into some big problems and lawsuits. So, I think the rest of the world here learned from them and doesn't want to do it. And I think that it would have to be done so carefully. But then if it's too open, that algorithm, it's just going to produce, candidates that are not qualified and not what I'm looking for at all, right? And so I don't know how they can really fix that or do that. And then again, the discrimination laws that are in place and years of discrimination laws that we've had on the books are going to have to be intact and be mindful as we write those algorithms. So I've got some pretty good friends in some pretty high level data analytics kinds of roles. And they're like, we're nowhere near close to doing something like that. We're just not. I think automation will be our friend, but the true, algorithms within hiring practice, no. There's some places where you're just not, you need a person. You really need a person to make a hiring decision, or like in law, you need a person to do some pieces of that.
Right. And Elizabeth, I feel like we discussed this a little bit during your last webinar too. I mean, the AI is still fairly new. It's growing at an incredible rate, and there's a lot of things that it's useful for. But I feel like we're just not at a point where we can rely
No.
on AI for this kind of specific topic.
No,
But maybe
not yet.
someday in the near future, soon, who knows? Who knows if AI actually gets that far? But I feel like there's so many other uses for AI currently, but can't be a one-stop solution for everything.
No, and I think what you're gonna see is, like, in the next 5 years, you're gonna see, unless there's some horrific lawsuit, you're gonna see governance and laws around it and how companies can implement it and how they can use it safely, et cetera. So I think that's on the horizon for us in the next, say, 3 to 5 years.
And I guess this kind of goes back. I mean, this does go back to what we were discussing, and I'm hopefully we already answered the question. But our audience member did ask. You
Yeah.
mentioned that AI is taking more of an automated role in HR. Can you
Yeah.
comment more on the specifics of that?
Yeah. So I want you to think of any place where you have a process or you have a big clunky spreadsheet that you could automate, or people spending hours and hours pulling a report, like one report, to cascade it up to senior leaders. You're going to start to see that piece of it automated. And what I have seen is like quick dashboards that are very seamless and easy to use, like in a Jira tool or in a Confluence tool that they can build them, or other tools. So I think what I'm seeing is we're definitely getting away from Excel spreadsheets, more automation. And then some of the automation too, automation like almost like robotic, where you've got like a chat bot that will help you through that hiring practice. Or maybe the automation is it sends you a stun text message, on your cell phone, reminding you of your interview coming up. That's where you're going to see it. So it's subtle, like you might even not even like see or realize it's being implemented into the process as a job seeker, but it's definitely there and coming up, and all companies are doing that.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So our audience member David asks, back in the day, no one wanted to hire a 60-year-old engineer. Then he follows up, what about today?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Is the 6-year-old engineer excited? Do they know about automation? Like, what can they give? Do they want to like go off and be the bridge between tech and the analytics team and the data scientists? Yeah, I think that's all changed. I really do. I think in the interview, it's going to be articulating that kind of brightness and really showing how you're not like the other maybe 60-year-old engineers that have applied in that rec, and how you've taken classes and what you've done. I guarantee you've done some automation in the last 1 to 3 years. You can talk about that. And that's what's going to make you different. So I think not only would they hire you, I think you could kind of choose your positioning, right? Do you want to be the leader between the two and help them through this bumpy time and then sunset out and retire? Or do you want to go in there and run a team that's doing that automation and do that. I think you could actually, have some pick and choose and design your role a little bit now, where you're right. Maybe before it was like, if you got laid off at 60, say 10 years ago, you may not get hired again. Right. So it was pretty rough. Yeah, that's all changed now for sure.
Yeah, and I do want to follow that up with this next question from our audience member. I think it's reassuring for a lot of people to know that age is not as big of a huge of a barrier as it was back then. But I guess to sum it all, does age matter still?
No, because here's the other thing. We've got such a discrepancy, frankly, between the 25-year-olds and how they were raised and their social skills and how they communicate and frankly, how they perform versus even the 40-year-old versus the 60-year-old. No. So age doesn't matter. And frankly, there's a lot of companies that want to hire the 40, 56-year-old and beat out the other candidates because they're easier to lead. They just have more of the social skills and the collaboration skills, right? They didn't spend their whole life in front of a screen. It's not to say that the other 20 to 30, 35-year-old engineer isn't of value. It's a very different employee. So part of it is experience. If you're looking for the 10 plus engineer, some companies are going to want the more mature engineer because it's easier to lead. They've just got more experience. And there's not to say one is better than the other. There's a place for both. But I've always been a believer in age doesn't matter. What they're looking for in the interview really is energy. Are you projecting energy? Are you excited? Are you current? What are you learning? What are you doing? And especially now, that's really the critical key in all of it, the resume, the interviews, the hiring.
For sure. Thank you. This next question, is being laid off considered a black mark against candidates or simply the reality of today's market?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my opinion, it's definitely not a black mark. I mean, I have to go back to it. We're 4% unemployment, and we've got a plethora of phenomenal candidates that are been out 6 months, 9 months, a year. I actually tried to do some research a couple of days ago because no one can tell me why that is. Why are we showing 4% unemployment? What that would mean is you would apply and you would get a call immediately. It would also mean I don't open up a rec and see 100 candidates in 3 days. That's more of a recession, frankly, market. So no one can explain to me, no economist, no one can explain to me why that's happening. And that to me is the real conundrum around that number. And so because of that, I think we're not even looking at the unemployment number anymore. It's not a black mark if you've been out for 6 months or 9 months or what have you. I don't think it is. Where say 10 years ago, it was like, oh, there's something wrong with that candidate. I don't see that anymore.
Right. And I feel like a lot of job seekers tend to, or I guess just people who are employed in general, seem to kind of confuse or put together being laid off versus being fired. And I feel like there's such a huge difference between that. Layoffs, I mean, been seeing it happening so much. There's always some sort of reason for being laid off and not because of the candidate themselves. So I feel like that's what people are afraid of. This next question, how can AI change the engineer's skill set?
Like what skills do we need or?
And I guess if our audience member could elaborate, but I guess if we want to talk about this a little bit, we've been discussing how to use AI. We've been discussing about how AI or the fear of AI potentially taking over people's jobs. Obviously, that isn't the case. But is there a way for job seekers to be able to utilize AI for their current skill sets in regards to engineers, or be able to
Yeah.
add that
Okay.
as a skill onto their resume?
Yeah, I understand the question now. So I think what I would share to you is how I went about it. Because in my line of work, it's not really being used. It definitely does. It's not impacting what I do at all. But I was afraid, and I was like, well, what can happen, and how much could they automate? And then the bottom line is, there are some jobs that are going to be impacted and go away. What I will say is across the board, no matter where you sit, no matter what industry, no matter what you do, your job will change. That's a fact. And so what we don't want to be is afraid of the change. And so my first thing was like, well, what could happen to my job? That was my first question. What I do is cybersecurity. My real question was, how is this going to change the skill sets that I look for? And I just took a basic security analyst, right? What could be automated in that job? So that was my first question. And when I couldn't get that answer, I just was like, just hit stop. Like, what is this? How does it work? Why are we afraid? Great question. Why are we afraid of it? Unanimously, that's your question. And so to understand it at a really high level and then back up and say, how is it going to impact my job and what can I learn? Go back to your question right there. How can it change my skill set? What is the likelihood of I'm going to be asked to do at some point that I need to learn now? That's your question. But I think until you even understand, you hear AI, every headline, everywhere. Nobody even knows what that is. It's a blanket statement. It's an umbrella like religion. And then you get into all the religions, right? So there's all this AI, but then, so then people think AI is machine learning, or they think AI is automation, or they think AI is, no. So what I would say is back up and understand the whole picture and then go back and ask yourself, how are they doing this now? Oh, I didn't even realize I have been doing it. Where are they going to go with it in the future? And you'll know once you understand the whole landscape of the map. When you see the whole map, you'll be able to answer that for yourself, I think.
Great insight. Thank you. This next one, it's pretty specific questions, but are software engineering jobs on a decline for individual contributors?
Absolutely. With that question, definitely. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of that code right now, they can throw that code right now into a tool and have it come out. And what's happened is software engineers, if they're lucky to stay employed, they're really QA people. And I don't know anybody that went into software engineering to just like review code. Like they're typically creative. They like to problem solve. They like to do all kinds of stuff. And so there's a huge decline there. I would never tell anyone to get that degree right now. And then we've also going to see, a lot of people on visas that are going to go home because we don't need them in this country as much. The degrees we don't need as much. We're flooded with them. And AI is going to take more and more of that job. So the competition for those jobs is brutal. I had a friend of mine posted a software engineering job. She had 600 applications in a week. She had to yank the ad. 95% of them had visa obstacles. So it's terrible. It's a mess. And so, yeah, I would be looking at other options to get out of that for sure.
I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Elizabeth. This next question, pretty good question from Patrick. How do you evaluate if a company is looking more for a specialist or a generalist? Do you think companies are more picky?
No, they're not more picky. It's just the market. They're not sure. And so they get right into the hiring and I don't think they get picky with what they see. I think the budget goes wonky on the back end and they're all of a sudden deciding if they're going to refund that position. That's what I've seen more than picky. And in terms of specialist or generalist, you can vet that out in your interview. And that's how you would be able to understand that. So if they ask you a question, you could kick back, that sounds important to you. Tell me about that, and just that you're going to have to vet that out if they want what they want. Your qualifications are going to really be a key piece of it too. If they're looking for somebody highly specialist, it'll be listed as a qualification and not desired. But usually you're going to have to get into that interview and vet and drill down.
Thanks for the question, Patrick. This next question, our audience member David asks, hello, please tell me about your executive order read, probably from what we were discussing earlier. Where can you get it? How long is it? Advice for a 77-year-old retired EMC engineer.
If you're going to read one, I'd read anyone that interests you, but I would read them word for word. Go to thewhitehouse.gov. Executive orders. Do not read anything else that pops up in the Google search. Just go there and look at the executive orders and you'll see it. There's one on DEI, there's one on AI, they're all there. There's one on immigration. And they're very clearly written. And what's interesting is the news headline is like a slanted piece. Like when you read the executive order, you actually become not afraid. Like all of a sudden it's just like taking 15 hours of classes. It was like, oh, it's not at all what everybody's afraid of. It's not at all this horrible thing. And so I really encourage everybody to read them. It's not very long either. It's very simply written and very crisply written, and you won't be afraid anymore. It's very clear where we're going.
Thanks for the question, David. This is a pretty common and good question to ask. Our audience member asks, I've had so many interviews, but no bites. Is this common today, or should I be discouraged?
That's where you might need a coach, honestly, because a coach is kind of they can give you the hacks and to kind of get in there and really figure out what's wrong. It's kind of like a doctor. You go to a doctor and you're like, is this bad? And they'll tell you like that. Yeah, that's bad. Or they'll be like, no, just take 2 ibuprofen. You're fine. You would need somebody to really look at it. No, I've seen some, go to interview right away. I've seen others that, like the call last week where we're just like, we're falling on our face, and we're falling on our face because we're talking about the wrong things in the interview. It's not enticing anymore. So everybody's got, it depends too, skill set, how saturated is the market, industry. I mean, there's all these things weave into it. So it's impossible to kind of answer that here.
Yeah, and I feel like a very big factor is at what point in your career stage you are. I mean, if you have never had a first full-time job before. I mean, at that point, it's pretty much a numbers game. You're fighting with thousands of other people who are in the same boat. And so I feel like that's definitely the best time to search for or get a consultation, find a career coach who might be able to help you step, you know, what's the phrase? Just stay ahead of the game and see how you differentiate from other people.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. So, folks, we are approaching the end of the hour. We'll finish it off with a few more questions. This question from our audience member: I'm a new member of IEEE. Are there webinars, classes, workshops available to help develop our skills and tools, texts, and certs to us by us that IEEE provides? I mean, Elizabeth, before answer, I mean, I'll just answer this first off.
Yeah.
Check the IEEE website. First and foremost, you will definitely find all the resources and links to other resources that you need. In terms of webinars or classes or workshops, I mean, IEEE-USA also has many free workshops or webinars available to you, many of which Elizabeth has hosted, and many very specific ones for general job seekers. Very relevant. So I would definitely check out any of those resources. But first and foremost, check the IEEE website. That'll take you to everything else.
They have I do want to give a plug here. They have a great section on AI, robotics. I mean, I was so impressed the last year how cutting edge the IEEE is with some of the AI news that they're coming out with. And I would definitely like and subscribe on LinkedIn so you get some of those articles and you can see them as well. They're really a big, great resource right now for AI.
And so this last question from our audience member, second to last question. Are employers gaslighting their workers in order to set them up for probation and eventually firing, as opposed to just doing layoffs?
I don't see that. No, I mean, I don't see that. There's not one-off cases like that. What I'm seeing is, nothing comes from nowhere, So, as the history goes, 2020, we had the pandemic and everybody went into their house and all the restaurants failed and all that went down and the tech people were fine. And then we got, even stimulus checks and we banked all of those, and companies, all of a sudden there was this weird moment where we couldn't get enough people in and we all had all this work. And so we overhired. And when we overhired, there was this huge demand for talent, and that demand for talent, we overpaid. It's no different than gas or oil or bananas at the supermarket. So we paid 30 to 70% more. And then about 2 years later, we had something called the big stay, where everybody sat down and didn't look for other jobs. In order for a healthy economy in our country, you have to have movement. You have to have movement in the stock market. You have to have employment. You have to have recessions. The Fed stood up the rates. Nothing was happening. Everybody stayed in their job. Now, people that made these big promotions for 70% more are not even at meets on their employment. They can't even get through the review, but they're not terminated out yet. And so what you have is massive stagnation, and what you have is massive waste, and you have people collecting a paycheck that are doing nothing, and that you can't substantiate what are they even doing anymore. And we've paid them 70% more, and they're also not at meets. That's not gaslighting at all. So that's what's happened. And you can't have a healthy economy the way that our country is set up. You've got to have movement, and you've got to have growth. And part of growth is also recessions, where everything burns to the ground, companies merge, and new things come up, like new startups come up. So we didn't have that. And so all of this is the perfect storm of just this massive stagnation. And now what you're seeing in the layoffs is really, eventually they'll call it right sizing. And then when AI comes in, it's going to be done due to just automation. You just won't need that many people looking at Excel spreadsheets anymore.
Great insight. Thank you. And so, Elizabeth, this is the last question. Might need a little bit a clarification on what this means, but can you give any tips to pass the ATS system to get my resume viewed?
Yeah, real simple. Read the qualifications, make them very clear on the resume, because a person reads it. That's exactly what's not going on. Can you give any tips to pass the ATS? You're not passing the ATS, right? There's no robotics in there. There's no automation. There's no bots. It's a person. So if a person is declining you, you need to understand that you're not resonating with the reader. And that's where a coach can help too. So very simply, it's like, right? The 95 people that apply to my ad are not viable for me, because not one person wrote risk on their resume. Decline. There's no ATS. A person declined you. So you're not resonating with what the person wrote. It's been like this since the age of time.
Great insight. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you for the great question. All right, folks. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today, and for providing your expert insight on what we can do to stay ahead in the job search game. We always love having you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope it helps. And just remember, it's an opening. It's positive. It's gonna be great. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you to our audience for tuning in and for your great questions as well. A few announcements before we end things off today. First off, IEEE-USA is now receiving nominations for our 2025 IEEE-USA Awards. Every year, the IEEE-USA Awards are given to recognize professionalism, technical achievement, and literary contributions to public awareness and understanding of the engineering profession in the U.S. You can find details on each award, eligibility, and the nomination process on our website. The link has been provided in the comment section. Next up, we're just a little over a month until our IEEE-USA Innovation, Workforce, and Research Conference, or iWork, event on May 15th in Portland, Maine. This full-day summit will provide a platform for meeting potential partners in industry, academia, and government, exploring federal technology initiatives, and learning about government small business programs that foster innovations in the Northeast. And it's definitely an event you don't want to miss. Finally, cabins are filling up quickly for the IEEE-USA's cruise to the Western Caribbean this fall, with most of the suite level cabins almost sold out. For those who have joined us on previous two cruises, you already know the incredible experiences and connections this event offers. For first timers, this is your chance to create unforgettable memories, enjoy great company, and embark on a journey packed with excitement. So don't miss out. Secure your cabin today and join us for an adventure you don't want to miss. If you enjoyed the content presented in today's webinar, be sure to check out our extensive catalog of other presentations and publications on demand on our website for your viewing pleasure. We have plenty on, and many of them which Elizabeth joined us for. So be sure to check them out. And if you haven't yet, be sure to like and subscribe to our social media channels. And don't forget to check back daily for updates on upcoming events. Have a great day, everyone.